Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the AfghanEye podcast. In this episode, we have an esteemed guest, Dr. Nafees Rehman, who is a computer scientist based in Germany, and we will be talking about Afghanistan, Pakistan history and political relationships. So, first of all, Dr. Saib, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Pekas. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And of course, my colleague Ahmed-Waleed Kakar is with us today as well.
Once again, I'll just say the same thing. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Saib. It's a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sure.
Sure. So, Dr. Saib, I've been following you on Twitter for years, actually, on different accounts. Okay. So I've always, I don't think I've said that to you before, but I've always been a fan of your content. So, you know, how would you say what would you say your background is, and how would you say you started to get interested into in Pashtun history, Afghan history, Pakistani history? Where did the journey start?
Yeah, as Pekka just mentioned, I'm actually a computer scientist. Yes. I have all my education in technology and computer sciences and information technology. My interest in history, especially Pashtun history, started when I immigrated to Germany.
Okay.
And then I felt kind of disconnected from my community, from my people. Mm-hmm. And that was the time when I said, well, who am I? What's my community? Where are my people? What's our history? And that's where I started to realize that, well, there is so much that I'm unaware of. Despite having a good education, I have not concentrated on that part, and I should learn more. And I would also like to mention that there were few inspirations on Twitter, and I followed those accounts. They are one I would like to mention, Barmazid and Takhalus, these two guys, really good guys. And I started following them, and then I realized, well, there's so much interesting stuff that I've missed on all my life. I should catch up on that, and that's where I started to do reading and to understand that. So I mean, that's how I started to have a.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, of course. And where would you? So you're from Pakistan. Whereabouts in Pakistan are you from?
Yeah, so I'm actually from Nowshera,
Okay. Yes.
And I've lived for 27 years of my life in Khyber. Mm-hmm. And that's you've not been to Pakistan, so I'm not sure if you know it. But
no, I know. I haven't been to Khyber, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, there was a time in Europe when common Europeans would only know two terms or two names of places about South Asia: India and Khyber.
Yeah.
So I've lived my 26 years of my life on Khyber. Did my education there, and that's also one reason that I know a lot about Afghanistan, because all my school fellows and friends and everyone was Afghan, or from Afghanistan. So that's how. But and I think it was about 10 years now that I've moved to Germany. But that's my short life story.
Sure, Sangar, have you ever been to Khyber, or am
No,
I the only
actually,
one that's never been?
No, I've never traveled beyond Nangarhar. I've been to other parts of Afghanistan, like I've been to Baghlan, to Balkh, I've been to Samangan, I've been to many places, but I haven't traveled eastwards. I haven't crossed the Durand line.
See, no, yeah. I've been to Quetta. I have some family in Quetta, and I drove from there to Kandahar. The journey was from hell, but it's I haven't actually been to the northern parts of Pakistan at all. Inshallah, once the situation sort of calms down between both countries,
we should make a journey together.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a proposal that's entirely new, if you think of it.
No, exactly.
Let me say one thing. I mean, of course, when you look at the situation sitting in Europe, of course, you see a different world, you know?
Yes.
But I've been to Khyber just months ago. I was in Pakistan with my family on vacations. So of course, this is, I have all my friends there. So whenever I go to Pakistan, I have to go there.
Yes.
So I recently visited that. And no matter what happens, situation on on Khyber, on Torkham, it's always fine. So you can go there anytime. You don't need to wait for this big, the stability or the kind of normalization of relations between Afghanistan and
You're
Pakistan.
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
You're absolutely
so you
right.
can go anytime there.
Yeah.
I mean, partially, I don't think that the situation can ever get to, a full breakdown in relations because of how closely the two countries are related. But at the same time, I think that the tensions between the two countries have had people on both sides, not just on one side, but the political posturing, the sloganeering and whatever, I think has, damaged both sides of the line. And I just hope and pray, inshallah, that sort of resolves itself. So, I mean, like Sangar said, joining the two countries is not something that's a new concept. It's most people don't actually know about it. I think you yourself have tweeted about it as well, Dr. Saib. Could you tell us a little bit more about how and why that happens, and it didn't end up materializing?
So I was, when I tried to study about history of Pashtuns and about history of Afghanistan, of course, Dr. Ashraf Ghani is also a very good anthropologist, and he has some very good publications on history. And I started to read his thesis, and then I bumped into some multimedia content, some lectures that he delivered, and some conferences that he attended in Peshawar. And there he was very vocal, and he was presenting his kind of a suggestion that Durand Line should not be treated as a colonial border, which has separated people, and it should be used as an opportunity where we come together and complement each other. And that's when I said, okay, let's look into that. Where is that a possibility still, or has there ever been a proposal or something that has in history either of the country has pursued, or some other countries around the world, if they have floated such a suggestion? And then I came across this one Pakistani diplomat. His name is Aslam Khattak. He has written a book, and he was also an ambassador in Afghanistan in the early 1950s. And this guy, I mean, when he was in Kabul, so it's the time when this Pashtunistan was the new concept, and there was a violent struggle going on, and there was also Bacha Khan and his people and his followers were also doing kind of a activism on that line.
Yeah.
So, and Pakistan embassy gets attacked in Kabul, and they are surrounded, and there are tribal Pashtuns, Wazirs mostly. They are there. They are led by some people in the government, and they are there. And actually, the Pakistani embassy gets surrounded. It's under siege, and the ambassador himself gets injured and is bloodied. And then he comes out and he tries to reason with the protesters and the people that, look, we are same people, we speak the same language, and there's no need to do such agitation, and we can talk about it. So, I mean, this is what he has written in his book. And then he mentions that, well, there was a proposal that why not to work on kind of creating a confederation of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And I believe that this was with the backing of the America. US was really active initially. I mean, we can talk more in detail about it, but what I've read, America was really the first power which tried to kind of play this role of negotiator and mediator between Afghanistan and Pakistan. So the Afghan government would approach US, so would the Pakistani government do and approach US, and they would try, well, you need to tell, Pakistanis would tell them that Americans need to tell Afghans to calm down and talk about things that we need to talk about, and should not make a fuss or make it political sloganeering, but we actually need to come to table and talk about it, and not just do propaganda using radio and newspapers and stuff. So Americans has kind of played a role into on that proposal, and also promised some monetary support. If that would happen, they are going to support both countries monetarily. They are going to invest into the railway line that would extend from Pakistan into Afghanistan. So I mean, there were these proposals, and there were also these visits from both sides, heads of states that have exchanged visit in Karachi and in Kabul, and they've talked. King Zahir Shah has also come to Pakistan in 1958. But I mean, this proposal was there, and it, based on what I've read, it was kind of something that could have been achieved.
Yeah.
But the reason of the failure, as I understand it, is not something on Afghanistan side, but it was because in Pakistan, then martial law was imposed and government was changed. And then this proposal, of course, went into the, it was not any more focus of the Pakistani government for some years. I mean, this was then renewed, but there was, the time lost actually caused the project to roll back, so it didn't happen. But I mean, there were indications that Afghanistan and Pakistan's governments, head of states, they were in agreement that yes, we can actually work toward this project and could achieve that. I mean, we understand a project of such scale, there are so many challenges to overcome that. But I mean, based on this book that I've read, it mentions that yes, there were indications that both countries were actually ready to give up on some things and to come closer to achieve this project. It's a pity. It's really unfortunate that it didn't happen.
So obviously you mentioned that it's a proposal, but did it actually get widespread support amongst, sort of political leaders in Afghanistan and Pakistan? Was it one-sided, or were there divisions on both sides?
No, I think I've not read.
Sorry to interrupt. No, it's just because in 1958, Sardar Dawood Khan was the Prime Minister of Afghanistan, and we could say he was arguably the most anti-Pakistani, most pro-Pashtunistan leader there was. So I just find it interesting that this sort of happened in his reign, during his time as Prime Minister. Was it sort of uniformly agreed upon on both sides? What was the makeup like?
One thing, when you mentioned that it was Dawood Khan's reign, I would agree with that, even though Dawood Khan was Prime Minister. But he had immense influence, and as we know, King Zahir Shah, I mean, he was raised, he was the king, but somebody else was ruling for him since the beginning. So I mean, he was kind of a backseat king who was not that much into exactly. So I mean, I would be honest with you that I've not read anything particular from the Afghan side. I've not seen any state documents on or any political statements from Afghanistan where they've indicated that yes, such a proposal was floated to them, and they were kind of working or thinking on it. What I've read was this just one source, and it's a Pakistani diplomat, so of course that presents one-sided view. But I would wonder if he would. There is no reason for him to quote something which was not a reality to Afghans at that time. So I assume that there was some agreement also on both sides. But Dawood Khan being there, I understand there was so much opposition. Yes.
Yeah, no, because I think I read about this article that, sorry, not about this proposal, that a couple of years later, when Zulfiqar Ali Bhutto was the prime minister, he said that a confederation or some sort of union with Afghanistan would damage Pakistan because Afghanistan was poorer, and why not do a union with India? If we want to get over sort of border animosities, which is, I'm sure you would agree, which is quite fascinating from a Pakistani prime minister,
Yeah, I mean, Bhutto is a very unique character in Pakistani politicians. So he has so much to his credit. He's being regarded as a revolutionary, and there are, the way he became mainstream in politics in Pakistan, it was through military dictators and their support. So, I mean, I remember the ambassador to the U.S., Afghan ambassador to the U.S., brother of Sardar Dawood, Sardar Naeem.
Yeah.
So Sardar Naeem would approach Americans and he would stress them that they need to talk to Pakistan about the issue of Pashtunistan, and they need to give the Pashtuns across the Durand line into Pakistan the right to self-determination.
Yeah.
And then they are being oppressed and they are being persecuted, and the US needs to intervene and they need to use their influence on Pakistan. And I mean, then Sardar Naeem visited Pakistan during President Ayub times. And it's the time when Mr. Qadir was Pakistani foreign minister. And Sardar Naeem said that Pakistanis need to really give this self-determination, and there needs to be a referendum on the Pashtuns, among the Pashtuns in Pakistan, if they would want to have their own independent state, Pashtunistan or not. And that time, the Soviet Union's foreign minister, I think his name is Nikita Khrushchev by that time. So he openly actually supported what Sardar Naeem has said in Pakistan about Pashtunistan. And then Pakistani foreign minister said that, well, if that is the case, then why not we have a referendum also in Afghanistan and allow the Pashtuns in Afghanistan to choose between Afghanistan and Pashtunistan or Pakistan, That was the time when Sardar Naeem said, no, that's not going to work. The issue only lies across the Durand line in Pakistan.
So I want to, why was the Afghan government, so the way that I see it is that Sardar Dawood Khan was probably one of the few, let's say, genuine politicians who had a sort of an aim, and he really wanted this to come to fruition, Pashtunistan. But was the aim that Pashtunistan would become an independent state, or was it that Afghanistan would swallow Pashtunistan and make a greater Afghanistan? Why would this serve Afghanistan's interest? There are a couple of questions to be asked here. Because the way that I see it is that, especially over the last 40 years, Afghan governments have used the Durand Line issue in public. They've politicized it, whereas in private, the most anti-Durand Line politicians, the most anti-Pakistani politicians, their own homes in Islamabad, their children are educated in private schools in Islamabad. So what is the determination here of Dawood and Naeem?